tonight from Broward County, Florida. This is the home stretch and the epicenter of what's shaping up to be a historic recount. It's taking place right behind me. We're looking at the Florida governor and Senate races, a double recount. So in that building, I can tell you, because we were just in there, election workers racing to finish the machine recount by the legally mandated Thursday deadline. Now, earlier, we were inside the building and we looked directly at how the recount's proceeding. We have that original reporting. We're going to show it to you. I also spoke to a group of these protesters gathered out here within the last few hours, and I'm going to show you that reporting in just a moment. Now, today, a slew of legal challenges and emergency hearings about the recount are occurring across the state of Florida. Republican politicians alleging misconduct, even though the Florida state investigators say they haven't seen evidence of any kind of voter fraud. Now, the difference in this Senate race is basically a photo finish, just over 12,000 votes out of a whopping 8 million and more counting. In the governor's race, Ron DeSantis is up by 33,000 votes, also out of about 8 million. Now, tonight, there are also key undecided state races that we're going to show you around the country in Georgia and Arizona. And then there's these new national numbers that show, as the counting continues, the midterms blue wave is getting even bigger and bluer. 7 million more people voted last week for Democrats than Republicans in those key House races. Democrats up by more than 6.5% nationwide, and that's even with so many races still yet to be decided.
How is it possible that the Monday after the election, we are still with you at the big board?
Statewide recount is underway in Florida.
Now we have to talk Georgia, because there is a big race there left to be called.
In Arizona today, the slow counting of ballots continues, with Democrat Kyrsten Sinema now in the lead.
Democrats should end up netting somewhere between 35 and 40 seats, when
giving the Republicans their worst loss since Watergate.
As more races get called, we could be somewhere close to 40 seats. The blue wave is looking much bluer.
Much bluer. Now, night has fallen here, and there are people behind me still at this late hour. A few hours ago, I had the chance to speak with some of the protesters. We're going to show you that. But first, let's go inside the epicenter of this whole debate and look at how the recount process actually works. This is ground zero of how the Florida election could be decided. Behind me are 12 different machines that are counting in real time these ballots right now. The over 700,000 ballots from Broward County, which could be the key to the entire state and certainly a key for Democrats. All 700,000 of those ballots are going through. What you're seeing behind me right now is a recount in two parts. First, the multiple page ballot is being separated to only have the first page removed. So behind us, that's what you're seeing these election workers are doing. And then after they separate that, which we're told will take hours late into today, they then will do the formal mechanical recount of the races on that first page of the ballot, including this key U.S. Senate race. That's inside the building that we're right in front of. Now let's get to our guests, and we got great ones. Mark Caputo is the ultimate Florida expert, writing for Politico. Mitchell Berger, special counsel for the Florida Democratic Party. He was also a senior advisor for the Gore campaign in the 2000 Florida recount. He has memories of this building and this setting. And Richard DiNapoli, a state committee for the Republican Party of Broward County. Thanks for being here as part of our special coverage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, let's start with you. Where do we go from here? Is this a normal recount, and what are the odds that the outcome changes?
It's a normal recount because there's a problem in Broward County and in Palm Beach County.
Okay.
So we can come to expect that. We saw that in 2000. This has kind of eerie recollections or echoes of it. It does appear, because of the margins in the governor's race, because of the margins in the Senate race, that it's unlikely to flip. So you
don't think the Democrats pick things up even if all the votes are counted?
I think they are going to. It depends on how you define votes, by the way. I do think that if you count the votes that were cast and accepted, for instance, by the supervisors of elections before 7 p.m. on Election Day, which means a lot of absentee ballots that didn't get there, I think if you just accept those, it appears that it's going to be.
Call me old-fashioned. Right. My standard would be under the state laws of Florida, which include past Tuesday, if all those votes are counted.
The state laws actually say that an absentee ballot that is not received by 7 p.m. on Tuesday does not count.
But they do the counting well through past Tuesday of what they have.
They do, but there's thousands of ballots that are probably sitting in post offices in various places that just didn't make it to the supervisor's
office. Let me take it to Mitchell. Our viewers know that Mark knows Florida.
Yes.
Is he wrong about the idea that the Democrats can't pick this up?
I said likely, and I'm not
Don't
categorical.
caveat. We're here. This is real. Let's go, Mitchell.
We're doing a machine recount. There was 25,000 undervotes in Broward County for the United States Senate race. When I tested the machines on yesterday, one of the machines failed. Machine number 10 failed, so we had to retest them. And if you calibrate an SAT type test, a standardized test, and you miss a question, oftentimes you see the standardized test companies put the tests back through.
Sure.
So we are now going to put the cards back through. And if in that race...
But this is not academic.
No.
This is to say, do you think Bill Nelson ends up as senator again if this works?
If there are 24,000 undervotes in Broward County where the people voted and there's a 70% return on those votes, Bill Nelson's the next senator.
Right. And when you say undervotes, what you're talking about is the idea that people meant to say something with their ballot, but the machine didn't get it.
And let me be really clear. Governor Scott is scared about that. If he wasn't scared about that, he wouldn't be bringing all these lawsuits about fraud, which don't exist.
That's interesting. You're saying if this was a real comfortable Republican margin, you wouldn't have such a panicky freak out, a veritable meltdown by Governor Scott who wants to be senator.
As my friend Mark Caputo said, otherwise you're ahead a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Right, but otherwise, if you're afraid that we're going to score 2 touchdowns because the votes haven't been counted yet, you start saying fraud, 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 which the judge today found no fraud.
Richard is our Florida Republican. What's your counterpoint, sir?
Speaking for myself, not for the official party, I would say that Governor Scott was elected senator on election night, and if the law is followed, he will remain the new senator-elect even after that. The question is, and Mitchell brings up, the undervotes. There's about 24,000. Brenda Snipes is notorious for not having transparency, committing illegal activities with regards to destroying ballots. That was a lawsuit just over a year ago.
You've made Mitchell take his glasses off.
It's on.
You know what that means.
That means it's on.
Now, I want to be clear. You mentioned Miss Snipes. She runs this building behind us. We were in there. Let's play a little bit of her discussion with my NBC colleague, Kerry Sanders, and then go back to you. Here's Miss Snipes.
Have there been mistakes?
There have been issues that did not go the way we wanted. So we can call it a mistake, we can call it whatever we want to call it. But I don't want to take up any more of the recess time for the canvassing board.
Richard?
She constantly makes similar excuses. She's not followed the law. It's been determined by a judge, not by me. It's a judge that has said that she has not followed the law in the past. Why, out of all these counties across the state, large counties, small counties, they can complete their legally required totaling at the appropriate timeframes. But always we come down to Broward County. Miami-Dade, they finished. Broward County did not. Miami-Dade has far more voters than Broward County.
I think this cuts both ways. On the one hand, the Republicans appear nervous, which seems to evince the idea that maybe there are enough votes there for them to lose at least this Senate race. On the other hand, you don't have to be a political junkie to know that Florida has some problems with elections. So what you're saying echoes some of what I heard when I spent some time with the protesters here. And in the late afternoon, a lot of them were Republican MAGA protesters. I wanted to hear what they have to say. Let's play that. By a show of hands, how many people here are affiliated with or hoping the Republicans win? What's your concern? What do you want to see happen inside there today?
We just want justice. We want the truth. We don't want fraud. Snipes has defied court orders when originally she was supposed to have the total count. We have 67 counties in Florida. How come here this is the highest Democratic concentration here that we have the problem here?
My sign says systemic sabotage. I think that this has been a long-term systemic sabotage. I think that it goes a lot deeper. These people cannot be that incompetent. It's a smokescreen for cheating.
When you hear the president weigh in that way, do you think that's helpful, or do you think he should stay out, let this Florida process run its course?
I think it's very helpful because we need to know that our leaders are with us, that they know that we have systemic sabotage going on in the U.S. elections.
I really think that our president should get involved. I think President Trump is probably the only one that can help solve this mess.
Mark?
Well, it's I'm going to try to split the baby here, is that it is almost beyond a doubt that Supervisor Snipes has had more controversies in Florida than any other election supervisor. There is a strong case to be argued and made for incompetence on her part and the part of some of her staff. However, to say that there is fraud, to say that fraud has resulted in disappeared or found ballots appearing, there's just zero evidence for it. And part of the problem that Governor Scott has had is rather than stick to the facts, which is that one can make a clear case for incompetence, he has, in the words of Spinal Tap, he's kicked it up to 11 and decided
Kicked
to go
it up
fraud.
to 11. You know that the King Solomon story about splitting the baby is the idea that you can't split the baby.
This is true, but I'm trying anyway.
You know, I guess what I want to ask you, Richard, is, and we're seeing the energy from a lot of the protesters here behind us, I don't know if you follow the musician J. Cole, but he has a song where he says, count it up, count it up, count it up, count it up. Isn't that the best way in American democracy within the state laws to go forward and count this all up?
I believe in counting every legal vote, and that's the problem here, is that there are votes possibly being put in illegally. Whether there is actual fraud, there is the appearance of fraud. I myself was present just last night at some ballot boxes that were found in a rental car at the airport. I can share the video with you. And there were unmarked ballots in that box. So if there are unmarked ballots floating around in rental cars, that lends the appearance that something is wrong here. Somebody could mark those ballots. Somebody could get them in there.
Let me get a final word to Mitchell before I got another interview.
I didn't eat any Chads in 2000, and there are no illegal votes now. Okay, and the judge found that today.
Right, and that's an important point on the facts, which is there have not been findings by the independent arbiters, by the judges or the state authorities of that voter fraud, which is what makes at least President Trump's comments about this so irresponsible and fact-free. Thanks to my panel on the ground, what I'm going to do right now is go right out to, I believe, Tallahassee, where we have Ron Meyer, who's a law expert representing Senator Nelson's campaign, the suit there over signatures on vote-by-mail ballots. Ron, what is at stake on that issue?
Well, what we have here is a question of using signatures of voters to have lay people determine whether they match the signatures that are on file with the Registrar of Elections office. And what we're seeing is just large numbers of votes being cast by registered voters being set aside by lay people applying no standards, just guessing at whether a signature matches or not, and those votes aren't being counted. There's a federal lawsuit that challenges that process that's ongoing. It'll be heard in federal court on Wednesday, whereby what we want is these people who have registered properly, have timely, properly cast a vote-by-mail ballot, to have their ballots counted, and that's what the lawsuit's about. Look, you can use my own mother as an example. She's an elderly woman in Palm Harbor, Florida. She votes by mail. Her mind is sharp, but not so much her handwriting all the time. If she wavers a little bit in signing the ballot, should her ballot be discounted and not counted? Of course not. She's a valid, regular voter whose ballot should be counted.
Now, Ron, you know I'm not going to talk about your mama. That's just how I was raised, obviously. But you're using her as an example. You're saying that these signatures sometimes might be at some distance from the original that the people are looking at when they're doing this poll work, and that they're going to just make a mistake. You're not talking about stealing an election. You're talking about a kind of human error.
What I'm talking about is a process that presupposes that everybody signs their name exactly the same every time, and that's just simply scientifically not the case. And we don't have standards in place for the 67 canvassing boards around the state to apply to even judge these signatures and whether they're the same. This is not a circumstance where somebody comes forward and said somebody else voted my ballot. This is a circumstance where a person voted by mail, signed their signature to the ballot, and it should be counted. And we have a process in place that doesn't allow it. We also have a circumstance in Florida
Let me ask you, before I let you go, Ron, I want to get you on the politics, which is the same question I asked earlier. Do you think, by your definition, if all the votes are counted, that Senator Nelson can actually win this race?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are enough legitimate legal votes that need to be counted that can flip that kind of margin. We've seen machine errors even in the recounts. Today in the afternoon in Duval County, one of the recounting machines had a hiccup and failed to tally 15,000 votes. Those votes had to go back through the machine to correct that in the recount. Those are the kind of mistakes that a machine recount will pick up from the original election night returns. So there's plenty of room to flip this election, and we believe that if everybody counts all of the votes that are legitimately entitled to be counted, Senator Nelson wins.
Well, that's the big bet, and that's the big debate here tonight, the debate with a lot of people behind me. Ron Meyer, thanks for sharing your expertise. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.